Renee has had many, many years working with individuals and organizations, dealing with transitions and change. And I'm really delighted to have you here again, Renee, to share. It's the Artichoke assessment is such a, um, I think it's just lovely. So I want to hear a little about what spurred this on, because your other book was really a number of years ago. And I love this idea. And I mean, I'll just say something that you said in the book, which is, people often talk about peeling onions, but onions make you cry. And so the artichoke has a whole other, feel, look, peeling experience. So
Yeah.
what led to this book?
Well, thank you for the introduction, Dory, and it is lovely to be back here again. So this is my third time with you, and I lovely to be interviewed about my new book. My first book was I said I would never write another book again. Actually, this first book was 287 pages, and I can barely lift it. It's so heavy and so full of so much that I thought, that's it, never write again. And that one was written in 2007. But one day when I was talking to my mastermind group, and I know that some of them are on here right now, that's Linda, John, and Julie, and we were describing to each other how we worked with our clients, how we worked in our business, because we were getting to know each other and they were getting to know me. And I described how I would work with difficult clients back when I was working full time and also had a full time practice, and how I had clients who didn't want to take an assessment test. I had clients who were very depressed. Well, they were successful in what they were doing, but they were very unhappy with their life and with their work, even though they were successful. And I explained to my mastermind how I use this very unique tool called an artichoke and gave it to clients and used it as an assessment tool, and how I discovered to using it, which I will also love to share with you, Dory, and with everyone here on
Yeah.
the call. And they said to me, "Why don't you write a book about it?" And I know, Linda, you must be shaking your head now because you're one of them who pushed me to do it. It wasn't something I intended, Dory. I wasn't going to write another book, certainly not 280 plus pages. But I decided that I would write a very small book that people could keep in their pocket or pocketbook
Mhm.
and carry with them, and a book that you can just pick up and read any chapter at any time. And so that's was the beginning of my writing. That was a 2.5 year process, actually. It was not quick because it really included so much of what I did with my clients, but it wasn't recent. It was what I did when I was working, as I mentioned, full time with a full time practice in the evening and on weekends. And it all came back to me, though. And I must say, I also enjoyed writing the book. It really became a fun process for me.
That's wonderful. And it's a really fun process to read, but it's very profound and deep in the questions you pose
Mm.
and the um, tips to think about. I mean, really reading it, I can feel, and knowing you too, I can just feel the years of experience that went into it and your sense of humor. I should say that Renee and I even did a presentation many years ago together,
Mm.
and uh, laughter and joy, and sort of you're the positivity pro
Yeah.
in a way. So I know, and you talk about it in the book, sort of how you came up with this assessment. Tell the listeners sort of how did you kind of decide to have this artichoke? What's the meaning of it for you?
Well, yeah, it's a great story, actually.
It is.
Um, and it begins with the idea that it's not an onion. and,
Right.
and onions make you cry. But not only do they make you cry, but when you start peeling them, where are you going? I never understood, actually, never understood peeling an onion. When people would say that, it's just like peeling an onion. I'd say, why? What is it? Where does it get you? It doesn't go anywhere. It's gone. You peel the onion and it's finished. But it's not the same with an artichoke. So how did I discover this artichoke as an assessment tool? Well, it happened during a dinner party, and this is chapter 2 and 3 in my book. And it was so important that I spent 2 chapters talking about the results of this dinner party and this artichoke. And I was sitting around the table with a group of people that I knew fairly well, and we were peeling, and I had actually never eaten an artichoke before. This was really a number of years ago, and I really didn't know what to do. So I was watching other people, and slowly everyone was peeling and scraping each one of these. We call them leaves, but they're really bracts, bracts, and that's the legal name for it. And they were all peeling and scraping and going yum. And I thought, wow, this is fun. So I continued to do the same and follow their instructions. And as we peeled, we were very quiet. There was a stillness, and we were a group of people that always chatted a lot. And suddenly it was very still. And one person started to ask questions.
Mm.
And the questions were simple questions like, what made you happy yesterday? Or what did you do that you've enjoyed? And just questions to get us thinking and talking. And we sort of all went around the table peeling and eating our artichokes and talking about things that we did that we loved doing. And stories started coming up. And things that we'd done in the past started coming up, and events that we loved, and people that we knew. And it was quite remarkable. And for me, it just changed my life because it came up with a story about how I loved walking on the beach and feeling the water through my toes and collecting seashells and making sculptural jewelry. And then it moved on to my love of, and this was very strange because I'd never told anyone this. This was a secret inside of me, that I love samurai movies, and that I had seen my first one while I was in college, and I had seen other Japanese movies, and they really moved me. I love the idea of the Bushido, the Japanese code of honor and the code of ethics. I loved what I learned about the Japanese culture from the samurai movies. And I started contemplating what I was doing with my life. And I realized that I didn't really want to, and I had just finished graduate school. I didn't really want to go into full-time working as a career counselor, but I wanted to explore more of what was coming up in this wonderful, what became an artichoke assessment. That was my love of Japan, my love of creating jewelry, my love of working with things that I can build with my hands. And I decided not to look for a career counseling job, but to move to Japan.
Which
And
is
so
quite a,
that was very
yeah,
dramatic.
very dramatic. But
Mm,
one of the things I want to stay right now with the metaphor, with the reality of, but also the metaphor of because you're talking right now of the positive things, and I know part of what's in the book are some questions to consider and ask as you peel. But the beauty of the artichoke is there's also that choke, that's
mm,
miserable part before you can get to the heart. So can you kind of
sure.
elaborate on that some too?
Yeah, of course. No, the artichoke has many parts to it, actually, and that's what makes it such an exciting tool for an assessment, and such a wonderful opportunity for people to use it and to really learn from using it. It has the outer layers, which are the leaves, but they're called bracts actually, because an artichoke is a thistle. So I'd like to just take you through a little bit of the makeup of the artichoke before we get to the choke, because the choke is really the most dramatic. It's the most dramatic part of the artichoke, even though we're still peeling off leaves and answering questions. But the artichoke is a very rich, full thistle that has these leaves that have little pointy spikes at the end of them. And they're a little bit like the beginning of what happens when you get to the choke. You can really stick yourself on and really pinch yourself and hurt yourself on one of these thistles. So it's to remind you that not that there will be obstacles, there will be problems, there will be barriers, there will be things that will pinch you and maybe hurt you, that you need to deal with and move on and move along. So as you keep peeling, what you can come to, and this is the part that happened when I was eating, and I didn't know what it was. And some of you who I don't want to ask all your opinions because there's a lot of you here today, but Many of you who eat artichokes know exactly what I mean. It's this fuzzy, silky, stringy white thing that covers
Yes,
up the heart. Did I describe it right,
you did. And let
Dory?
me just also encourage people, use chat and we'll integrate things, along the way, but I just want to let you know that I will be
Great.
monitoring it. So, but yes, it is
Is
this
that a good
thing that you
description?
have to
Yeah, it's
confront.
this
Yes.
thing. And
And
what
sometimes you want to
happens,
give up, when you get
that's
too
right.
hard.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. Sometimes when you get to this thing called the choke, which covers the heart, which is what's so important about an artichoke, it has a heart, which an onion doesn't have. An onion has nothing. So why you peel it, I don't know. But the artichoke has the heart. But covering the heart is this choke. And the choke, and I know I felt this way when I got to it because I'd never seen this before. It's very difficult to peel away. You have to really scrape it and really work on it. And it became a beautiful metaphor for dealing with barriers, problems, challenges, things that hinder us, things that prevent us from moving forward. They're not easy sometimes to really overcome. But if we do work hard and we do overcome them, then we can get to what I call the heart of what's important to you, the heart of the artichoke, which is the most delicate and most delicious part of the artichoke and the most nutritious. But unless you peel away that choke, you're never going to get to the heart. And that's what life is. Unless we deal with the problems and the issues and the hindrances and the negativity. And we do have so much negativity. And so many of my clients at that time were so negative about their jobs, about their life, and about losing their jobs, about wondering what to do next when they retire. They were upset about being forced to retire. So there was a lot of choking going on, Dory, and a lot of people getting very upset and wondering, how do I deal with this? And here was this wonderful choke as a metaphor of being able to peel it away, scrape it away, and then find what's really important in your heart.
Did you kind of put that all together at that dinner party, or was part of it after you came back from Japan? Because it sounds like for you, it really led to just this major turning point in your life. But then you came back to
Yeah.
the career counseling and, all the coaching and all the speaking that you do and all.
Well, at that point, I was working part time in the evenings for a community agency, and I was doing some career counseling. And so I was working with, and this is in my first chapter, with Karen. And Karen had come into, I was running groups, and Karen had come into my group, and she was very excited about getting her master's degree and finding a job. And she found a job, and she said right away, she found one immediately. She was only in the group maybe two sessions, and she felt she didn't want to take an assessment because she knew exactly what she wanted to do, and she found what she wants. She found a really good job, and she was really thrilled and happy. And she came back into the group after that and was very, very unhappy and said to me, I don't know what's wrong. Something has happened. I just don't want to be on this job anymore. It's not what I really want, but it's what I thought I wanted. But she still didn't want to take an assessment. And I realized that this is a good candidate for the artichoke. So I
She was your
gave her an
first.
artichoke and I said, let's look
Yeah.
at this.
How
And
did she
let's peel
respond?
it. Let's see
Yeah.
what happens.
Mhm. Can you share? I mean, I've read the book, but
How did
others
I?
haven't. Can you share how she responded and sort of what began to happen as she
Oh,
began to
she
feel the way?
responded. Oh, absolutely. Well, she responded very excited, actually, but a little confused.
Now, did you have an
She didn't know
actual artichoke,
what
or
was
were
this
you?
woman. What was this woman doing? I'm here for career counseling. It's not
It,
what I
what,
think it
did,
should be.
but did you have an actual
Um,
artichoke that she
oh
did, or
yes,
was it
yes, I
a
did. Yes.
picture of
Now
it? Oh,
this
yeah.
time, well, I was so excited about the whole concept of trying it out with the client because it worked so well for me that I wanted to see how someone would respond and if it really would be something that would
Yeah.
be successful and that I could actually use as an assessment tool. And she really was, like say, a little concerned and a little strange. I was a little, this is a strange career counselor, but she figured, and I said, come on, let's just try it, see what happens. So she did, she was willing to do that. She was pretty open. That was great. She was pretty flexible. I probably wouldn't have done it with everybody, but I knew that she probably would be okay with it. And she didn't want to take an assessment. So what was I going to do? I needed to know what was wrong, what her skills were, what her interests, what her values, and what she really felt was important in her life. Because definitely it wasn't her getting her master's degree. That wasn't making her happy. And her job wasn't making her happy. So I needed to do something. So she started peeling. And as she peeled, I started asking her questions. And the questions will be, you see up there on chapter 5. And she started responding, and she started giving me answers to things that I asked, like what makes you happy, or what did you do when you were a young child, or what did you do in your teenage years? And she started talking about one thing: designing clothes and making dresses and making costumes for school plays and performances. And it all led to something far away from marketing.
Right.
And I thought, aha, this artichoke is really calming her down and getting her to see what's really important in her life. And what was really important was designing clothing. And she left her job, her marketing job, started making clothing for a small boutique, and ultimately became pretty successful with people buying her clothing throughout the US, small boutiques and small stores for original handmade costumes and clothing. And she was pretty happy, and
It's a
it was the
wonderful
artichoke
example.
that really got her to see
Yeah.
that this could be another way of looking at what's important for people who are too anxious, too stressed, too angry, and not wanting to take an assessment, or not even thinking. And I have other examples of other clients in my book, as you know, Dory, of thinking that they had anything that made them happy, or thinking they had any successes in their life, or anything that they did well. And as those of you who are career counselors on this call, I'm sure you have some people like that. And so what happens if they don't want to fill out an assessment? Or they give it back to you, as some of them did to me. They gave it back to me blank. I don't have anything to put in here. I don't want to do this. Let's do something else. So
It's
the
interesting because
artichoke filled that gap.
would really, yeah. And I mean, I'm, although I do some career counseling, I'm not a career counselor as you are, and I don't tend to use assessments. But the questions you ask and the artichoke, I have to say, I'm thinking of beginning to use this with some of my clients, because it's not just the career changes, it's life changes. I mean, any kind
Yeah.
of transitions, and you do focus in the book
Mhm.
on transitions and sort of the how people get stuck, and sometimes that choke is the ending, of something. But before we move on to some of that, give another example, because there were a couple of men that you mentioned in it, and I think it's helpful, because you had a few people who were skeptical. I remember,
Mm.
that you mentioned in the book. I think
Mm.
Steve was
Yeah,
one.
sure.
I just think he's a good example if you're willing to share that too, because, he was somebody with, who was very, very skeptical at first, but
I,
then really got into it, I remember.
I love sharing. That's right.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the fun part, it has to
yeah.
be fun. It has to be fun. And that's what makes this artichoke assessment really such a marvelous tool, because it is fun, but it's also delicious, it's also nutritious, so it's got a lot of positives. And I do have a lot of examples in the book, because I did use
Yeah,
this with quite a few clients.
right.
And so I'll tell you about Richard. Richard, he's in my chapter 3. He was in marketing in an electronics company. He was he had been to a career counselor previously, years before, and he had assessment tests, and that's how he wound up in this job. And he got this job, and it was a good job. He was doing well. People liked him. He was promoted. Um, it looked like it was someplace that probably he could stay and wouldn't be kicked out, and that people really, liked him being there. And again, he did well. But he came to see me, and he came to see me just and it's quite honestly, Joy, I never thought I'd see him again. He came the first time, and I remember meeting him, and he was wearing a trench coat, and he wouldn't take it off. And I said, it's a little warm in here. He said, no, I just want to leave it on. And I thought, oh, this poor guy, I think he's really, depressed, and he's not going to come back, and what can I do for him in one session? And he was telling me his story about his work and what he did and how he got his job and his other career counseling experience, which was fine. And how that helped him get the job, which he was there for already now, I guess, about 10 years, maybe even longer at that time. But something was gnawing inside of him, and he didn't like going to work in the morning. He wasn't happy, and he just felt that he wasn't living fully and richly in his life. And so I thought, aha, the artichoke. Why don't I bring in an artichoke? And so I did that, and we talked about it, and we peeled it. And as he peeled, he started talking about things in his life. I asked him questions, and the questions were, what did you do before you took this job? What did you do when you were in school? What did you do when you were a teenager? And I kept going back to earlier parts of his life in the questions as he was peeling and asking and answering. And for each answer, it was really so easy at that point. What came up was he loved taking care of people who were sick. And he read books about health and healing, and that the weekends he used to take care of an uncle who had Alzheimer's, and previous to that he took care of his parents who were elderly, and that gave him great joy, and that he just loved learning more and more about sickness and illness and how to help people. And it was, again, so clear that he was totally on the wrong path, and that he needed to be on this path, and that he ultimately did leave his job, went back to school for nursing, became a nurse, and became very happy in his life. And he was an older nurse, an older male nurse. So people really loved when he went for interviews. Everybody wanted to hire him. So he was thrilled. And it was the artichoke that just opened up this energy. Yeah. And there's this belief that there was something else that was more important than the work he was doing.
Which is so wonderful. And also thinking, I mean, some people make that change either by choice or forced earlier in life, but just even thinking about retirement and people trying to figure out, what am I retiring to, or what's next? And, I've had many people who've said, my prior work was for the money. I want something where it's my heart. And it just seems like, there's something so beautiful about using this assessment and thinking about helping people really find the purpose in their heart, and, whatever their calling is or what gives them joy and pleasure. It's quite lovely. Do you need have you used just pictures of, or have people imagine an artichoke rather than always having to have one there? Or how does that work?
Well, right. Buy up all the artichokes. What if they're not in season? That's a big problem, isn't it? Where do you find them? And if they're not in season, what I'm finding is that the stores seem to have them now more than they used to over the years past. But when they're not in season, they don't look so good. So you don't even want to buy one. Think, oh no, this is, you don't want to bother even trying to eat it or cook it or just so. But no, it is best to have an artichoke, of course, because it really involves all your senses.
Right.
And that's why it really gets so deep, and why people forget that they're not happy, because they're thinking of something else. They're eating something, they're peeling something, they're looking at, their feeling. So it really involves all the senses. But having said that, can you use a picture? Sure. Yes, you can. And you can use it as imagine. Imagine that you're going to peel an artichoke. And I've done that with some clients. I haven't put in artichokes all the time. That would really be ridiculous. If I was cooking up these artichokes and bringing them in.
You do mention at the end some ways to cook them and all. I mean,
yes. Dory, I really felt that the book, that it's in 3 parts. And the third part is it's a little different from the assessment. It's getting to know the artichoke. It's about the history, the folklore, the myths. It's a very interesting thistle
It is.
that's been
Yeah.
around a very many centuries. And I read it somewhere. It was even one of the first cultivated foods, which is
Hmm.
pretty amazing. It's been around really a long time. And I decided that I really wanted to have a chapter, and that was kind of iffy for me. I wasn't sure I should do it, but I
Mm.
wanted to do it, a chapter on cooking,
Mhm.
and how to cook the artichoke, because people would say to me, "Oh, you wrote about the artichoke." I don't know. I've never cooked it. And so I'd say, well, I better
Mm.
write about how do you do it, because for me it also
Yeah.
was a learning experience, and it's kind of a little tricky. You have to cut off some of it, and you have to cut off the top, and you have to
Right.
wait a long time to you can. But I found you can steam it, which is even quicker. And
Mm.
I found out my husband tried air frying it, so you can
Oh,
even
really?
air fry an
No,
artichoke,
haven't
and
tried
it
that, but I
came
would
out
like
pretty
that.
good. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
So, but back to your question, do you need a no, you don't. You can use a picture and just say, no, imagine that you're peeling a
Right,
leaf and how does it feel? And
right.
when you start to eat it, what are you doing? And like put people in the
Mhm.
mood
Right.
it's basically to be relaxed and to be focused and to be intentional. And you could
Mhm.
do that without the actual artichoke.
Yeah. And what you say too in the book, and it's true, there's a meditative part of it when you actually have the artichoke. And so it's that
Mhm.
kind of calmness and centering yourself so that you can get in touch with, kind of what's really, really important to you. Can you also, I mean, you have this lovely chapter on some of the history and myths, if you want to share any of that, but you also talk about the integration of using this assessment with some of the things and the principles that you learned in Japan, which is another lovely part of the book. Can you share a
Mm.
little of that with some of the listeners?
Yeah. Oh, I'd
Or
love
not?
to. I'd love
Okay.
to. That's one actually I say this about every chapter in the book, but I'm going to
Yeah,
say it about
right.
this one. That's one of my favorite chapters. um, it's chapter 9, and I love that chapter because it brings back a lot of memories for me,
Mhm.
and it really helps people. So when I was in Japan, I did a lot of studying of metal, something called mokume-game, which made me very happy. And I also studied a lot of the Japanese principles. I noticed that people had a different way of thinking about things and believing things, different from the way we do here in the US. And so I learned a lot about principles that I felt really connected to the artichoke. And so I'd like to just explain some of them to you here. I know you read it, Dory, but I'd like to tell some of the people on the call that, and some of them you might be familiar with because they become one of them actually. People keep saying to me, "Oh, I know Ikigai. I know that one." It's become mainstream almost, which is
Right,
wonderful,
right.
wonderful that it's gotten here to the U.S. and that companies are now using it in
Mhm.
training programs with their workers. It's an ikigai is why you get up in the morning. Basically, it's the reason for living, and that's what the artichoke is. Why do you get up in the morning? What makes you happy? What do you want to do with your life? And ikigai in industry now, they're looking at it as a Venn diagram, as what do you do well, and this is what the artichoke asks also. What do you love? The artichoke also asks that. What does the world need? Hopefully we can find that connection also. And how can you make money or doing this? So it's a very much connected to what the artichoke is doing when you start peeling and start answering the questions. So ikigai is one of them. Again, mainstream now in the US. People are using it. People know about it. And people always stop me and say, I know ikigai. I say, yes, that's right, and connected to the artichoke. The other one that I really like so much is kaizen, Kaizen. And
Right.
kaizen it wasn't an ancient Japanese philosophy. It was one that actually came about in the 1945 after the war, after World War II. And it was an American, W. Edward Demings, who actually created this concept that talks about doing things in very small increments, not very large, but very small, so that you could see your progress and even award yourself. And he created this to help the Japanese industrial structure rebuild. And it was so successful, this process, that they actually have his picture up on in Toyota on their wall in their lobby, an American. But he talked about, and so Kaizen is a wonderful connection to the artichoke assessment, because the artichoke assessment says take your time, focus, relax, stay calm, build up this wonderful mindfulness as you peel and as you answer the questions and you think about your life one at a time. Don't rush through it. And that's what Kaizen is. Kaizen is very small increments of continual building up and getting to where you need to be. And the artichoke is the same. It's very small peeling of each leaf and very small increments, building and building and building until you get to the choke. But then when you get rid of the choke, you get to the heart. And that's what Kaizen is about. So I love that it's so connected to the artichoke assessment. Yeah. And the other one is Chardo. Chardo is the way of tea. And the way of tea is about a tea ceremony that's very relaxing, very calming, very focused, and very intentional. And that's what the artichoke is. It's a very calming, focused, intentional, slow, meditative process. So there's a great connection between so many of these Japanese concepts and how we use the artichoke as a metaphorical assessment tool.
That's very, very helpful. I want to integrate a couple of questions that have come from listeners, and then I have a whole bunch more too. But Gail, who I know you know, she says, knowing that the heart is there, a vision of what is possible just feels very, very motivating. So that was a comment that she made.
Thank you, Gail.
A question was, she's referring to Karen, your first artichoke assessment person that you mentioned. She says, do you think having her doing something physical utilized a different part of her brain?
Oh, absolutely. That's the whole concept of why the artichoke is so important, because you're not just sitting there thinking about things. You're moving, you're peeling, you're using, as I mentioned before, your senses. So it does calm you down and it helps you refocus your brain on what you're really thinking about at that time. So there's no room for anything else. And absolutely, Gail, it certainly does refocus the brain. And it's the whole movement and it's the whole focusing, the whole seeing. Even if you're not using a real artichoke, and if you're imagining it, you're still having your mind an artichoke and peeling leaves. And that helps to not distract people on negative. It takes away the negative thinking that people might be distracted by. So yes, absolutely. Thank you, Gail. Good comments.
And Elaine wants, and I know you've shared some of the self-assessment questions. Can you share? She just asked, what are some of the other self-assessment questions that would be helpful for listeners to know?
Okay, well, that is chapter 5 in my book.
Right.
And I've based the questions on a Rudyard Kipling poem that I just love.
Yeah.
And it's I Keep 6 Honest Serving Men. And I would love to read the poem. Yes. Can I do that, Dory?
Please read it. Yes.
And this will be answering your question, Elaine, I promise. Okay. So I Keep 6 Honest Serving Men by Rudyard Kipling. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. You know what? I have to put my glasses on, though. Can't forget that. Okay. Okay, I'm ready now.
Okay.
I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when and how and where and who. I send them over land and sea. I send them east and west. But after they've worked for me, I give them all a rest. I let them rest from 9 till 5, for I am busy then, as well as breakfast, lunch, and tea, for they are hungry men. But different folks have different views. I know a person small. She keeps 10 million serving men who get no rest at all. She sends them abroad on her own affairs from the second she opens her eyes. 1 million hows, 2 million wheres, and 7 million whys. So, based on this beautiful poem of these six honest serving men, I've created a series of questions. Some of them maybe have been used before by people, but I worked really hard on these questions. And some of them might be familiar, some of them might not be. And they're questions based on these six serving men. And I'll just read a few of them to you so, Elaine, you can hear what they are. Um, what is my favorite story from a book or movie? What leisure activities did I enjoy most at ages 6, 15, and 25? Sometimes they turn out to be the same activities, which is very interesting. Why do I feel like something else is waiting for me? Why do I get excited about some activities and not about others? When did I begin feeling happy? When did I begin feeling unhappy? When did I realize I needed to change my life or my career? So basically, these are lists of questions based on Kipling's Honest Serving Men, who I just adore, who are very busy. And when you have these questions, the image is to also be very busy in answering these questions and finding out the answers that lie beyond the choke, but in your heart.
And one of the nice things in terms of how you've organized the book is toward the end of each chapter, Renee has kind of a word to look for. So it makes you kind of go back in the book to kind of skim it again to find, to like the word peel or the word choke or things like that. And I found it was kind of fun to go back and I'd have to find a word that started with that letter or a number of words that started with that letter. But there's also
Mm,
kind of a journaling aspect, a kind of writing things down and a couple of worksheets, with skills and values
yeah.
and things that you've sort of learned about yourself. So that, the book is a wonderful way of using the assessment too. Um, and what
Thank
was,
you. Yeah, thank Dora, you really did go through this book very thoroughly, and I so
I did,
appreciate that. And thank you so
yeah.
much.
It's
Because, and I'm
part of
so
why I love
glad.
doing these series. I love being able to read the books and
Yeah, you're so good. You're
um,
so good at this. And I love that you love the just for fun section
yeah.
because I thought about that for quite a while. I shared that with my mastermind. I said, should I do this?
Mhm.
What will people think? And it's really interesting because I did ask a lot of people that I knew, and some people said, oh, no, we don't want something like that in the book. That's going to distract me. And then other people said, oh my God, I love it so much. So I decided that, well, first of all, it's called Just for Fun, and it is
Yeah,
at the end of the book, and this is kind of what it looks like. See it?
yeah, yeah,
It's to pick two words within the chapter that you just read and find and that start with the letter of, and in this one it's dreams, to look for dreams. And I felt that it was give people an opportunity to reread the chapter
yeah,
and
exactly.
to really incorporate the meaning of the chapter and find out and maybe find something else in the chapter that maybe they missed the first time they read it. So there was a method for me to
Yeah,
do
and
that.
it exactly worked that way. That's what I was saying, that
Great.
and I must say that Fiona here says your book sounds absolutely marvelous, Renee. And
Thank you, Fiona.
the fun work, I should say too. I mean, even the book years ago that I co-authored, the couples retirement puzzle, we
Mm.
have instead of homework, we had fun work in it
Oh,
because it really, it's nice to think about doing things that that excite you and that are
yeah.
kind of fun kind of things to do. So,
Mm.
if people come in and they're just really stuck, where would you have them start? I mean, would
Mm.
it be, I mean, if they came in and you just met them, and you didn't know, I mean, would you at the beginning, well, I guess you mentioned with Richard, um, did you use the artichoke for him the very first time he came in? No.
No.
So you wouldn't necessarily, I mean, so if somebody, you know, came to you, or if somebody listening today just feels really stuck, Do you have a suggestion for just even themselves of how they should use this artichoke assessment?
Yes, I do. Yeah, so I use this with a number of people, and I usually had a session or two before I gave it to them because I didn't know that they didn't want assessments, so if they had done
Right.
assessments, or I needed to know a little bit more about the person, and that's what happened with Richard. And as I mentioned, I really didn't think he'd come back,
Mhm.
but he did. He came back, and there I was with the artichoke. So big surprise to him. But I would think the first way to start, well, since this book is about an artichoke assessment, would be to get an artichoke, to go buy an
Yeah.
artichoke, read chapter 10, how to cook it if you don't know how, and how to peel it, how to prepare it, and then look at the book, and you can go jump right into chapter 5 to the questions and just work on it on your own, because this is a self-assessment. And that's what was so important, that I really want people to be able to do this and use this on their own, and to really and then to go to a career coach to maybe process it and discuss it and work through it. But if they don't want to, or work with a career coach and then use this as an assessment tool, if they're feeling that they don't have any, as I had so many people like that. I don't know, it was the place where I was working. There were a lot of people who were very negative about their jobs and in their life, and didn't feel they did anything well. And so that's very hard to give someone an assessment when they don't feel good about themselves. They're not going to be very able to complete it and say good things, or things they value and things that they like to do, because they don't know what they like to do. But that's another short story. But I'd say that get an artichoke, learn how to cook it, or just find a picture of an artichoke. And if you can't find a real artichoke and don't want to bother cooking it, find a picture, Google it, find it, and make a copy of it, draw an artichoke, and just think about peeling each leaf, and what does each leaf represent for you, and what does it mean for you, and looking at the questions in the book, or just asking yourself questions. Get a copy of Kipling's poem and ask questions related to the men, his 6 honest serving men. I mean, you can certainly do this on your own.
No, I think you mentioned in the book it was a high statistic of the number. Was it 80% of negative thoughts? Or I was just trying to find the page in the book. Oh, here
Yeah.
it is on page 42. 80% of our thoughts are negative and 95% are repetitive. I mean,
That's a lot of negativity.
a lot of negativity.
Mm-hmm.
And you do spend time, maybe you could share a little of, say people really are stuck at the choke, the obstacles. What have you found? What tips from your both this artichoke assessment, but also your work with so many clients? What are ways of confronting those obstacles that really get in our way to get to our heart?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, Dory, that we don't even realize that we even our language, this self-talk that we give to ourselves, that we say to others, I'm having a miserable day today. Oh, it's pretty awful outside. Oh, it's going to rain again. We're always we're inferring negativity about so much, and repeating it, as you mentioned, that I said in the book, 95% of the negativity that runs around in our head, we repeat, which is a lot of negativity. So and it's always there, just as the choke is always there. You're never going to get an artichoke without a choke, because that's why it's an artichoke. It has to have a choke, and the choke
You
is what
can't, yeah.
it's
And you
that
can't get through
negativity.
life without obstacles. So, yeah.
Yeah, you can't. That's right. Without the barriers, without the challenges, without the problems. That's what life is. But we need to overcome the ones that are preventing us from moving forward. And so some of the tips that I give, and some of them could be, they caused by health, they could be caused by not having enough money, they could be caused by change, by losing your job, it could be caused by family problems. There's so many issues that come up in our life that can really short circuit us moving forward into being positive, and having a good job, a good life, and being happy. So some of the things that I talk about is, and this is one, that I feel really strongly about, and I use it with my clients quite frequently. And I use it with myself now also because, we all have these negative thoughts that come up. And so this is the 3-to-1 ratio. And three is a big number. We have the three, as children, we have the three pigs, we have the three blind mice. As speakers, we have 3 points. We have three is, we look at things in threes very often. So when we look at negativity, I really believe we need to look at 3 positives because the negative is so strong. It's so ingrained in us so much of the time that we don't even realize that we're being negative or that we're seeing or that something is happening to us that we're reacting to that's preventing us from moving forward. So we need 3 positives to balance out the negative. So every time you think a negative thought about something that's happening in your life or there's something that's done to you or that some frustration that you have, try to think of 3 positives to refute that negative. Not 1, not 2, but 3. Because the balance of negativity is so strong that you need to bring it up with those 3. So think about what you can refute. Think about evidence. Say, do I have evidence for this? Have I done this before? Have I done something similar to this before where I was successful, where I got over it, where I was able to change my attitude? Have I helped someone to change theirs? Try to look at it from positive. So start thinking of 3 things that are positive to balance that 80% of negativity that swims around. The other thing would be to write a positive affirmation. And I know a lot of people are familiar with affirmations and use them. I find them very, very powerful because they bring a visualization to your mind, and the visualization makes you think that you've done it already. So a positive affirmation is a wonderful way of refuting some negative thought or negative belief. And you should write it many, many, many times because it doesn't become real in your brain unless it's written, and you should speak it many, many times. So I always used to tell my clients, and now you can do it all the time because everyone's talking to themselves in the street. You don't know what they're doing. So you can just repeat your affirmation when you're out on the street. Repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. And that repetition helps to push that negativity away. And you start to believe your affirmation. It becomes real. Write it down everywhere. Write it on your refrigerator, on your front door, on your bathroom mirror. When you get up in the morning, when you jump out of bed, repeat your affirmation. The affirmation is something you want to change that's negative, something that you want to make better. And it has to be in the present tense because it has to be something that you feel you're doing now. And it has to start with I, and it should be very short because you want to remember it. Because I would have clients who would write these long affirmations, and I'd say, you're never going to remember that. Even though you're repeating it a lot, just make it 5 words or less.
So what would be an example of a simple affirmation?
Oh, a real simple one. I am happy when I get up. I am happy every morning. I jump out of bed with happiness. How can you not be happy when you say, I jump out of bed with happiness? It has to be present tense. It has to be something that you can see yourself doing in your mind's eye.
Yep. Yep. A wonderful example. And you also, talk about it, sort of self-acceptance and accepting our flaws, and mistakes bring opportunities, which I think is really important to keep in mind too. And that brings in, I just remember that I love, and you didn't mention it when you were talking about the Japanese, and I'm blocking on the name of it, but the imperfection.
Wabi-sabi and kintsugi.
Yeah, that one. I love that. I love that concept because
those are my favorites.
Yeah, life is hard and we all make mistakes at times, or, you've got to, sort of not shoot for perfection because it doesn't really exist. You'll always be disappointed. And,
it's true.
And so that beautiful Japanese thing where something's repaired with gold, is that the
yes, the gold lacquer of repair. It's a very beautiful concept.
Yeah.
And wabi-sabi, that there are 2 different concepts. Wabi-sabi is that nothing is perfect.
Right.
And that there's imperfection. And it's a beautiful concept for aging because it says there's imperfection in decay. Terrible word to use, decay, but that's what they say because that's the translation. But there's beauty in aging. There's beauty in wrinkles. There's beauty in who we are. There's beauty in gray hair. There's beauty in how we change, and to look for that beauty, because that's wabi sabi, that we can learn. Our experience is beauty. And it goes along with kintsugi. Kintsugi is repairing the cracks with gold lacquer. And it's such a beautiful
Yes,
concept.
such a beautiful.
And so if you have a broken, and it's something that I want to start to do, I'm going to look for a class where I can start using gold lacquer and repairing things, because, I do work, Dorian, maybe every other month I work at the Repair Cafe in New Paltz, which is near to where I am now in my garden. And by the way, this is Shinrin Yoku. This is being in nature, which comforts us and makes us feel better and makes us feel healthy and happier. And so I decided to have this talk with you in this beautiful interview, in this meeting with you in nature. And so here I have nature. So I hope that as people are seeing my background, that it's calming for you.
It's the forest bathing as
yes, forest bathing. It is not about taking off your clothes and getting naked.
So I want to integrate a few more comments and questions here. That Gail says, the research says we need 5 positives for every negative. Rick Hansen says that. And so I think your idea of the 3 to 5 is so, so important. And Karen says, I love those affirmations with a big heart. And Ellen asks, do you eat the artichoke and do you provide dips when you use it?
Oh my gosh!
Well, you do talk about dips.
I knew someone would ask that.
Well,
actually, I don't. I think if I did, I'd have a lot more people wanting to come see me. Maybe I had more clients.
Do they have artichokes frozen when it's off season? I haven't really looked for frozen artichokes.
Well, they do have. Well, people always say to me, Dory, "Oh, I just bought some artichokes, and they bought them in the glass jar. They bought the hearts, which is okay, but that's not the assessment. You need the bracts. You need to be able to peel it, and you need to be able to answer these questions as you're doing that. But no, I don't think they I don't know if they come frozen, but when they're off season, they almost look like they were frozen. They don't look too good. Yeah. and in response to Gail, I think that 5 would be too stressful for some people. I think I prefer to start with 3. But thank you. I think we'll up it to 5 if we can.
The other thing I just wanted to comment about the book is that you have some beautiful quotes, and at the end, actually, you just have a list of some extra quotes but each chapter really has some quotes. Do you want to share any of the, because they're
I love quotes.
Yeah.
I love quotes. And I was putting them in my book, and I was putting them everywhere. And people were saying to me, you have too many quotes. People are going to read the quotes and not listen to you. So I took them all out, and I said, well, what do I do with all of them? And then I found even more. So my appendix 3 is titled Additional Quotes to inspire and motivate. Yeah. And they're wonderful. I love all these quotes. So let me see if there's one I can read to you. Oh, here's Walt Disney. This is pretty quick. He's real short. If I can dream it, I can do it. That's pretty positive. If I can dream it, I can do it. And then a scientist from India and the former president of India, he said, you have to dream before your dreams can come true. That's true. You have to know what your dreams are. And that's what the artichoke assessment is about. It's what are your dreams? What are the dreams that are lying somewhere deep within, caught up maybe in the choke and not allowed to escape to get to your heart? What are those dreams? And if you don't know what those dreams are, then you're not able to build them and deal with them and live them. So the artichoke assessment will help you to find your dreams.
I think that's lovely. Now, how can people reach you if they want to learn more about this? Or
here's my QR code.
Okay,
is that okay to take a picture from that? There's a double one. It's both the same.
Okay,
but you can reach me at Renee at positivitypro.com.
Okay.
That's my email. Or you can just go into my website, positivitypro.com. This
Okay.
Positivity Pro is my business name.
Mhm.
Or you can text me. I love people to text me. If you have any questions, I respond to those much quicker. My number is 646 327 2119. Send me a text. Let me know what
Okay.
you're thinking, or send me an email and I can respond to you.
I don't have any other questions from other people, but I do want to I mean, it's a wonderful book. Is there anything else you'd like to say and kind of a final takeaway that you'd like to share with people?
Oh, well, yeah. I see this book as a practical, reflective guide
Mhm.
that
Nice
helps
to put it. Yeah.
that can help the reader to uncover what truly matters to them. It's a powerful metaphor that
Mhm.
invites you to peel away significant life layers
Mhm.
and create a framework for a self-discovery of resilience and personal happiness.
Mhm.
I wrote this book for people to find joy in their life, which is what, as the Positivity Pro, that's always been important to me. That's what I found when I work through the assessments myself, that it's important for me to make people feel happy and for people to be happy. Life is short, and why not be happy? But as we know, Dory, there is so much negativity, 80%, 95% repeated, that we need to work on being positive, and hopefully that this book can help people to do that and find their way and find what matters in their life to feel fulfilled and happy.
I think that's so important. I mean, it's part of, really being able to have that joy span, really thinking about quality of life. And I think your book is a very valuable contribution. And I really would encourage people to get the book and to be able to benefit from it yourself, or if you're still working with your clients. But it's beautiful. And, as
The
Gail
book
just
is on
said,
Amazon.
beautifully said. Yeah, beautifully
You can
said,
go, you
Renee.
can buy it
Yeah.
on Amazon. It's there, or you can buy it through me, or just get the book
I
and
do
enjoy it.
recommend it. Yeah. Thank you so much. And the other comments are just coming beautifully said, Renee. Bravo. So thank you. Thanks so much for being my guest. And it is a
Oh, it's been
beautiful
my
background
joy.
that you have. And I'm really glad that I was able to have you back again.
Me
So
too. Thank you so much, Dory.
take care.